Hello, and welcome to a beginner guide to using timeline reminders. This video goes over the basics of using the add-on, and I'm just going to assume that if you're watching it, you've never actually used it before. Timeline Reminders is an add-on that lets you easily create reminders for yourself that show up during fights. Reminders are essentially just texts, icons, bars, and circles, similar to weak auras that show up and tell you to do something. And the goal with Timeline Reminders specifically is to make this process as user-friendly and easy to understand as possible. Now, let's get into how the add-on actually works. So firstly, you can open the add-on up either by clicking the minimap icon over here, or by typing /tr for timeline reminders. Once you do, you're presented with a timeline for one of the raid's bosses. You can select a different boss in the drop-down right here. Let's, for example, navigate to Mythic Voracious. And I'm just going to make the screen slightly larger for you, so you can see more of the timeline at once. As you may have guessed, the colored squares on the timeline represent mechanics that happen during the fight. So this big blue one up here is the boss's Void Breath, and the purple pinkish one just below it is the Roar, etc. You can right click and drag to view different parts of the timeline, and you can scroll to zoom in and out. To create a reminder, you hover your cursor over the time in the fight that you would like it to show up, and then double click. So let's say I want to create a reminder for myself when Void Breath happens, this big blue bar. I'd go here, I want a reminder to show up at the start of Void Breath, and then I double click, and there it is. The window that pops up lets you customize the reminder that you just created. I'm just going to close it for now, since I first would like to show you what reminders look like on the timeline itself. Here you can see the reminder that we just created. If we hover our cursor over it, we can see that it doesn't say anything yet, and that's just because we haven't customized it, but we'll do so in just a bit. You can left click it at any time to continue customizing it. If you're not entirely happy with how your reminder is positioned, you can simply just click and drag it to change where it shows up. And if you are happy with your reminder and would like to reuse it someplace else, you can hold Alt while dragging it to duplicate it. Let's say, for example, that I want this reminder to show up for every Void Breath. I would just zoom out and then Alt drag it to the other ones to make it show up there too. And if this went a little bit too fast, you can always hover over this information symbol in the top right and it'll tell you all of the shortcuts. One last hotkey that I forgot to mention is that you can middle mouse click reminders to quickly delete them. So let's delete the two reminders we just duplicated, here and here, and focus on this one. Right, so as I showed you earlier, you can left click a reminder to customize it. And here you can change what the reminder tells you. So let's say it'll tell you dodge beam. You can change what color it is. Maybe I want it to be colored red because it's very important. You can add text to speech. Maybe it'll tell me to dodge when there's 2 seconds remaining on the timer. You can add sounds, you can add countdowns, and you can even glow other people's frames. And generally, if you are confused about any of the options shown in this window, you can just hover your cursor over them to see what they do. If instead of just some text, you want to create a reminder to use a spell, you can click the fireball icon here, and that turns this into a spell reminder rather than a text reminder. It gives you a nice little drop down to select a spell. We're a hunter, so maybe we'd like to make a reminder for Aspect of the Turtle, because we're really bad at dodging beams. As I mentioned at the start of this video, you have the option to display reminders as either texts, icons, bars, or circles. And you can select how you want this reminder to look using the drop down in the top left here. Let's turn this specific reminder into a bar, and we can now press the test button to preview it. There it is. You might have to move this window out of the way a bit because it's in front. And of course, we could have turned it into a circle. or we could have turned it into just a text. Anything works. Once you're done customizing the reminder, you can just click the green check mark to save it. And you can see it now turned into a turtle icon on the timeline. Now you might be wondering how you control where on your screen the reminder shows up and how to make it smaller or larger, since those options weren't present in the configuration window just now. This can all be done in anchor settings, which can, big surprise, be accessed using the anchor button in the top right. Here you can see a bunch of preview reminders for each anchor. You can move the anchors around to control where they'll show up, and each anchor has a number of settings that can be accessed using the cogwheel icon. So just to give you a little bit of an example, let's customize what our bar reminders look like. So I like my bars to be sort of stretched horizontally and not have a very big height. So let's increase their width and decrease their height a bit. And let's say I want them to grow downwards instead of up. So I select down. I kind of like this font that I'm using, but I don't really like the background. So we go into this dropdown. Bigwix has some nice background, so maybe we'll use charcoal. And yeah, this looks pretty good to me. Another important thing that Timeline Reminders does is display reminders from MRT node or Northern Sky Ray Tools node. For this example, I'll just use MRT, but it works perfectly fine with NSRT as well. So let's open up MRT and assume that our healing officers or someone else made a bunch of healing cooldowns for us. For this example, I'm using the output from Viserio's website, which is likely what most of you will be using. So as you can see, all of the reminders that I just put in the MRT node now show up on my timeline. It's a little subtle, but the reminders that I made myself in Timeline Reminders have a white line, and the reminders that originate from either MRT or NSRT have a sort of light blue line. And the reminders from MRT will show up during the fight, just like the one we just created ourselves. MRT node reminders cannot be customized individually, since that would require you to actually change the contents of the node. That means you cannot drag them and you cannot duplicate them. You can, however, click them, which lets you create or change a template for that specific spell or text. Templates let you control what node reminders look like. They control the options for all reminders of that spell ID or text. The important distinction here is that when I click a reminder that I created myself, such as this one here, we are customizing that specific reminder. In this case, we are customizing all aspects of the cheetah reminders originating from a node. This means that, let's say we color this reminder yellow, and we make it just say cheetah. Every time we receive a aspect of the cheetah reminder from the node, it'll now be yellow and say cheetah. To illustrate this, we can hover our cursor over the cheetah reminders, and you can see that it is yellow and just says cheetah. Now, even though we clicked this one here, this one is also changed. Because again, every single time we now receive an aspect of the cheetah reminder from the node, it'll use the settings we just created. And this also means that you can decide on a per spell basis if you'd like to display it as a bar, a text, a circle, and whatever. Okay, I just got killed, but let's continue. To access the templates that you've made for yourself, you can always just open up a random reminder and click the templates button in the top right. And you can see the yellow aspect of the cheetah template that we created earlier. This also lets you access your default text and default spell templates, which apply to all node reminders that do not have a specific template set up. To illustrate, let's go into our default spell reminder, and let's set the text color to blue, and then update it. Hovering our cursor over the reminders on our timeline, you'll notice that every single reminder that originates from the NSRT node now has a blue text. This doesn't apply to the cheetah reminders because, as I said, they have a specific template set up for them, and those take priority over the default templates. It also does not apply to the turtle reminder that we made at the start of the video because that reminder does not originate from a node. You can use default templates not only to control the color of your node reminders, but also to control if they are displayed as bars, icons, texts, or circles. You can use them to control their duration and even their sound and text-to-speech settings. Lastly, I would like to mention that if you ever like to give your reminders a test before pulling the boss, you can use the simulate button. The simulation starts where you're viewing the timeline. So let's say I'd like to test this section right here. I'll just start viewing the timeline shortly before those reminders show and press play. And you'll see as it reaches the reminders, they'll show up on my screen and I can see what they'll look like during the fight. And that was about it for the beginner guide. There are a bunch more features and options that I haven't gone over yet, but hopefully they're fairly self-explanatory. If you're planning to use timeline reminders for the first time, I would advise you to give the settings a quick look, which can be accessed in the top right here. And if you're ever confused about what an option does, its tooltip will likely provide a pretty good explanation. Thank you very much for watching, and if you decide to pick up the add-on, I would love to hear your feedback about the new user experience. You can just DM me at any time on Discord. Enjoy!